time to dive back into the alphabet challenge, and today we're talking about games starting with the letter N through S. Hello and welcome to Nelson All Over. Today we're talking about 6 different games, and these are games that I either like, I don't like. They just start with the letter because we're making our way through the board game alphabet. So if you have not seen the previous 2 videos, those will be linked below. That goes through, oh my gosh, I have to remember our ABCs. A through N. Yep, because we're starting, no, A through M. We're starting with N today. I just actually don't have the box. It's the first one in the alphabet that I don't have the box for, but we'll talk about that here in a second. Those will be linked down below, as well as maybe popping up here in the corner if you want to start at the beginning. Now, kind of what the same disclaimer that I started with those videos, I'm just picking games. These are not my favorite games of that letter. These are kind of the games that I wanted to speak to and talk about and discuss around that specific letter. So if you have a game that you like that starts with this letter, let me know in the comments, because I like talking about games and I like to talk about them with you. Anyways, let's dive into it. Let's start with the letter N. This is the first game that I actually don't have the box for. I've never owned this game. It's just a game that I've played, and I actually didn't really like it. It's Nemesis. I'm going to probably put the box cover here somewhere so that you can see the box, but I wanted to talk about it. Also, I realized that there are not a lot of games that start with the letter N. Weird. But Nemesis is a game that I got to play a couple of years ago, and I was really looking forward to it. Nemesis is currently ranked, I want to say, in the top 25. I definitely should have looked it up before this video. I want to say it's the top 25, maybe the top 10. And it's a game that has been highly regarded. It's grandiose production. It has a incredible looking board and standees and all these 3D sculpted models, and it looks incredible. It has a really cool story. Basically what you're doing is you are on a ship, and you are working semi-cooperatively, which is one of the things I will talk about here in a second, which is why I didn't necessarily like it. Where you're moving around and you have this secret objective where you are trying to either obtain, escape, die, I don't quite remember everything, while aliens are attacking. Everybody plays an asymmetrical player power, which I did like. I did think that those were pretty cool. And they all are just moving around the ship and trying to do their thing. There are a couple of reasons I didn't love it. I was expecting something that was a little bit more mechanically driven. It was more of a story-based game, which, knowing that going into it, I think would have changed my expectation a little bit. I am not a huge fan of story-based games where the mechanics don't necessarily support the story as much as I wanted to. I'm much more driven in a gameplay experience from the mechanic standpoint. But outside of that, Nemesis was long. I think it took us about 4 hours. Now, majority of us were new players, so I will chalk that up with a little asterisk. But it was too long for what it was. It did create some epic stories, but outside of that, it just wasn't a game that I was drawn to, and I didn't necessarily know what I needed to be doing the entire time. I had a couple of secret objectives. I think you get to choose, and one of them was to kill another player, which I felt like that felt not like the type of game I was wanting to play. I would rather play a game that is fully cooperative, or that there's a betrayer, not necessarily something where it's just kind of an intense, am I or am I not going to be hunted this game? And it felt a little flat for me. I'm honestly a little surprised at how high it is on the Board Game Geek rankings. And I know there are people out there that love the game. It may have just been the first experience. And I had a whole video talking about how I needed to give games more time. But it is a game that I don't think I would play it again. I may if someone came up with some good excuse for me to do so, but it doesn't feel like a game that I want to get back to the table. But if you like Nemesis, let me know, and let me know what I'm missing. We'll move on to games that I have boxes for. For my O game, we're going to talk about Orléans. Orléans is a bag building game, and it's a kind of a worker placement bag building game where you are trying to score in multiple different areas. You are adding workers into your bag, and every single turn there is a limit of how many workers you can pull out, and then those specific workers can be assigned to different action spots. And so different action spots will have different worker costs. So maybe this one requires a knight, a scholar, and a fisherman, or whatever. If you draw those out, then you're able to place those workers on that action. Once it is filled up, then you get to carry out that action. I really enjoy this game. This game has a level of randomness that you can kind of control and manipulate, especially because you can place workers or actions out there without filling up the action slots, so you don't get to activate the action, but then they're out of your bag. And so you can kind of set up and manipulate future turns, and just the strategy mix with the very tactical nature of this game kind of just makes me really, really happy with Orleans. For some reason, something about this game clicks with me. I just have a grand time playing it. I don't think that people who play it with me I don't think the people who I've played it with have enjoyed it as much, and that's why I went ahead and I got the Orleans Invasion pack, or the Orleans Invasion expansion, which makes the game, it has a cooperative mode, and that has been a big success as well. We've only played that 1 or 2 times, so it is something that we need to get back out onto the table, but it is something that has kind of supplemented Orleans and made it into something that we can get to the table a little bit more. But Orleans, don't let the box cover fool you. It's a fantastic game if you like bag building games. This, actually, spoiler alert, this may not be the only bag building game on this list. So for my P game, we are going to choose Pandemic. Pandemic is one of the very first games that I bought. I think the first game that I actually ever had or owned, like a hobby board game, was Dominion. Dominion I got for Christmas one time when I was in college, maybe high school, and Pandemic came soon after that. I bought Pandemic. I think it was maybe one of the first games I bought. I bought a couple of games in from a local store. It was Pandemic, Summoner Wars, and Small World. Yeah, it was those, and I brought them back to school, and we played the heck out of these games. Pandemic is a cooperative game that you are going around trying to eradicate 4 different diseases that are trying to take over the world. The game felt less personal before 2020, and now it feels a little stressful, maybe is the correct word, but it's a cooperative game where everyone has an asymmetrical power. It seems to be a theme in some of these games that I enjoy. And it's a game that I enjoyed and I've kind of fallen out of love with, mainly because there are so many games that do what Pandemic is trying to do better, in my opinion. Pandemic is a really good starting game. It's a really mechanically simple game in terms of relative cooperative experiences, and it has a couple of downfalls, and it's just a game that whenever I'm playing it, I'm like, I would rather be playing Spirit Island. I'd rather be playing Aeons. I'd rather be playing X, Y, or Z, just because Pandemic feels like a game, 1, I've played a lot of, and 2, feel like it has a problem with quarterbacking. And what I mean by that is one player kind of playing the entire game while everyone else sits around and watches. So this can be negated. There are ways to prevent quarterbacking. I just think that Pandemic is the perfect storm to allow quarterbacking, because you kind of play with open information. It's a very mechanically easy game. That's one of the ways that you can decrease quarterbacking, is increase the complexity of the game, so that it just makes it harder for players to quarterback. But Pandemic kind of leads itself into quarterbacking, or a quarterbacking situation, which is another reason that I don't necessarily like to play it. That being said, I don't think that this is ever going to really leave my collection. I do enjoy bringing it out. It's more of a nostalgic gameplay experience at this point, and I will bring it out. I'll play it maybe once every year, maybe every 2 years. With that being said, I have played Pandemic Legacy Season 1 and Season 2. Season 1 was absolutely phenomenal. Season 2 is good. I have not tried Pandemic Season 0, Pandemic Legacy Season 0. That is on my to-do list. And so I've heard that's very, very good. Kind of sneaking in a couple more picks with Pandemic Legacies. So if you have not checked out the Pandemic Legacies, highly recommend you do so. And Pandemic is my P pick. I talked about multiple bag builders on the list. For Q, we have Quacks of Quedlinburg. Also, not a lot of Q games in the world yet, but Quacks of Quedlinburg is another bag building game where you are brewing potions. You're a quack. You are brewing potions to sell to score victory points and buy better and more expensive ingredients for your potions. What I really like about this game is it's a simultaneous push your luck type system, which makes it so that it can be fun, it can be quick, and it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy, but it has a lot of modularity, which makes it pretty special in my opinion. Wolfgang Warsch does a phenomenal job. He's one of my top 5 favorite designers of all time. He's done this, he's done Quacks, he's done Wavelength, he's done The Mind. He has a wide range of what he can do, and Quacks is one of his best, in my opinion. In this game, you are going to be buying different ingredients that all have different effects when you draw them out of the bag. They have a printed number which dictates how far along you move along your potion track, and if you can get further along the potion track, you're going to score more points and get more money to spend on new ingredients for future rounds. If you explode, meaning that you draw too much garlic or cherry bombs, I can't remember which they're called. I think we always called them garlic, but I think they're actually technically cherry bombs, but the white pieces. If you draw too much of that, your potion blows up and you get half the rewards. You can either choose to take the victory points or the money, and it is a fun decision at that point. Is your bag good enough to not take the money and take the victory points to kind of keep you in the running, or do you need the money in order to build up a better bag for future rounds? The different tokens that you can buy have different effects. In the base game, each token, most tokens have 4 different effects, and so those can be randomized, those can be set with different preset scenarios or modules set in Quacks, and like maybe the green token does something this game, and then next game it does something completely different, leading to a lot of replayability, near infinite combinations of tokens. And if that wasn't enough, there are expansions. I have not played the expansions, however I have heard pretty good things about them. One of the biggest things keeping me from playing these expansions is I bought the Geek Up bits, which are kind of the acrylic tiles for Quacks of Quedlinburg, which are phenomenal. They replace the little cardboard tokens, which the cardboard tokens get a little nasty. I also have the Geek Up bits for Orleans as well, and I would have to buy more of those for the expansion, and I don't know if I like the game enough to spend like $80 total for the expansion and the Geek Up bits. And Quacks of Quedlinburg, I think without the expansion, with its own base game, is a very solid experience that I would highly recommend, especially if you're looking for something a little bit lighter and something that you can play with gamers and non-gamers alike. Let's move on and talk about the R game, which is Race for the Galaxy, and probably one of the more beat up boxes I have. I got this one in a trade. It was marked that it was not in the best of conditions when I did trade for it, but it's a little sad. But you just have to be careful with it. Race for the Galaxy is a card building tableau engine building game that plays in like 15 minutes, right? It's a very, very, very quick game, especially once you know what you're doing. And, well, okay, plays in about 15 minutes with 2 players. I've not actually played this game with more than 2 players, I don't think. Maybe I have, but the majority of my plays, I've played it around 20-25 times, is with 2 players. In this game, you're building up a tableau of different worlds and different technologies in order to try and score you the most victory points. There are 6 different stages in the game that don't get activated every round. They only get activated if a player chooses to activate them this round. In a 2-player game, you get to choose 2 phases. In a more than 2-player game, you only get to choose 1 per player. So if you want to explore, you want to search for more cards, then you play the Explorer. That's the first action or the first phase every single round. Everyone at the table gets to do the Explorer phase because 1 person played the Explorer card. Now, if you want to settle, same thing. Everyone gets to settle, and if only 1 person played the card. The benefit to playing the card is you get a bonus if you play the card. So like when you play the settle card, after you settle a planet, you get to draw a card. Cards are multi-use in this game. They are the planets, they are the technologies. They can also be used to pay for things. So if something has a cost of 3, the way you pay for that is you discard 3 cards from your hand, meaning that cards have a lot of value, and there's some fun decisions on, am I going to be able to play, am I going to be able to settle on this planet, or do I need to toss this away, use it as a resource so that I can settle this, which is going to catapult me into something bigger and better later in the game. This is one of those games that the more I play, and as I played it more and more, I started to realize the depth in this game. The cool thing about this game is that there is a lot to do, and because it plays so quickly, you're not going to be able to do all of it or nearly close to most of it. And you kind of have to focus. You have to choose what you want to do early. Find your victory points and exploit those. Search for those. Explore. Search for the military planets if you're going that strategy. But don't try and do everything, or else you're probably going to lose. You don't have enough time. And you can explore different strategies with different and more games. And so I've played games where I went heavy military. I went games where I went heavy production, where you can sell your card, or you can sell goods that your worlds produce for more cards, and that just kind of allows you to see and choose your strategy. I've gone heavy technology, and each one has been successful in their own different way. And it's up to you as the player to try and figure out how you can make your chosen strategy successful. And it's just really cool. It is called Race for the Galaxy because it's a race. As soon as somebody either plays a 12th card in their tableau or takes the last point from the communal points, which is a whole other part of the game I'm not getting into, there's communal points that you can grab. The game ends. The game ends after that round, and it comes quick. With players being able to play 2+ cards a round, this game can be over in 6 rounds easy if they want it to be. And you kind of have to gauge on how you are playing, your pace of play, how that compares to your opponent, to make sure that you are being able to capitalize and grab as many points as you can with the allotted time that your opponent is giving you. I really like this game 2-player. It feels very tug of war. I can look across and see that my opponent is maybe not playing, they're playing a lot of really expensive planets that's going to be slow. It's a little bit slower of a strategy. At that point, I can adjust my strategy. I can turn down my speed a little bit and maybe, build out and build out to bigger and higher victory points. Or maybe what I want to do is rush the end of the game and try and choke them off from being able to play long enough to score those victory points. And it's just a really cool, really fun decision point, and it's just a really cool tug of war between two players. This game, I really enjoy pulling out. It's a great coffee table game. It does not take up a whole bunch of space, and it's a deck of cards, basically. I mean, there's a couple other little components, but it's basically a card game. And so Race for the Galaxy is a game that you can get fairly inexpensively. I highly recommend Race for the Galaxy if you really like engine builders, tableau builders that can play, that are very snappy. Awesome. So that's Race. Let's finish this segment of the board game alphabet off with what I would consider a masterpiece of a game, and that is Scythe. My S pick for the board game alphabet is Scythe, designed by Jamie Stegmaier and published by Stonemaier Games. Scythe is a game that, it's a big game, it's a big box game, and it looks like a dudes on the map game. And what I mean by that is it looks like a conflict-oriented, we're gonna battle out over territory type game, but it's really not that. There are a lot of ways that you can get victory points in Scythe, and fighting is one of them. And that's what I really appreciate. I'm not typically the biggest fan of kill your opponent, head-to-head conflict type games, and Scythe kind of gives me a little bit of that, but it doesn't make me go at another opponent's throat, and I can get my victory points from Scythe without ever engaging in a conflict. It's probably not the best strategy, but it is a strategy. In Scythe, you are controlling a warring country of Europa. It's kind of an alternate universe. Also, what I will say is the world that Scythe has built is really, really cool. So there's a lot of lore. I think, right here, world building and art. Jacob Roskowski. Probably didn't say that right, but there's stories. The flavor text is really interesting. The events in this game are really cool. Scythe has a lot of depth in that sense, but gameplay, it is very strong. Gameplay, you're controlling a country in Europa, and you're trying to score victory points by placing out stars by doing multiple different actions or multiple different things in a game. And so you place a star. Once you place your 6th star, the game ends. I think it ends immediately. Even if in the middle of your turn you place a 6th star, the game ends. And so the game can be pretty quick. And the ending can come a lot sooner than you think. Big box like this, you would think it would be some epic long experience, and it can be that. But a lot of games end, if you have experienced players, they can end in under 2 hours, hour and a half. And in 2 players, I think my wife and I were getting it down to about an hour per gameplay, and it can be pretty interesting. So you have stars for combat. You have stars for building all of your mechs, which are these cool robotic looking things. You basically get stars for doing things in the game well, or completing things in the game. And at the end of the game, you get you get a number of points based on your popularity and your stars, area you control, as well as resources. I really like the way that this game scores. So there's 3 tiers of the popularity track, and through game mechanics, you can move your tracker up the popularity track. And then if you get into the next tier, then your stars, your area, and your resources are going to score more points because you are more popular. And that's a really cool mechanism trying to manage. What I have found is it's not the best strategy to try and get to the top. The best strategy is to be higher or at the same level as everybody else. So if you spend all of your resources to get all the way to the top, then you're probably not winning the game. That may not be a super fair statement, but it can be really hard. It can be a trap to try and bump your popularity all the way up and focus only on that and not necessarily score the points for what the popularity is going to amplify. And that's cool. There's a lot going on in this game. It's a game that we actually did a podcast on Fantasy and Some Flights. I'll link that down below as well. That is a strategy guide for Scythe. We played a lot of Scythe, and we wanted to talk about it. And so we kind of talk about different strategies and different ways to approach the game. And I really enjoyed that. Since then, we played a lot of Scythe leading up to that. Since then, I have not played as much Scythe as I probably should have. But it is a game that I do want to get back out onto the table, because it's a game that we played enough that I was tired of playing it. But I feel like that time has kind of relaxed, and we are back into, I want to play this game again. So Scythe by Stonemaier Games is a really cool game and a really great pickup. Yeah, so Scythe is my S pick, and that's going to end it for the board game alphabet. We do have one more of these videos where we will finish out the rest of the alphabet. I'm looking forward to that, but let me know what your thoughts are on my picks for this segment of the alphabet, or let me know if you think that there's a better game. I'm not saying that these are the best games, so I do want to hear what you have to think about the board games that start with these letters. Let me know in the comments, and I look forward to reading them. Thank you all for hanging out. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscription to the channel. It goes a long way in helping me produce more content. I appreciate you all, and I look forward to talking with you about some board games. I will see you around. Peace.